Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher podcast, a place where your dreams can find a voice. We all want to live in an empowering home environment that brings out our best. We also want to be able to shape our homes to reflect who we want to be and align them with our behavior and purpose. My guest, Emily Grosvenor, believes that we can make this a reality with conscious effort. She believes our homes hold limitless opportunities to inspire action and create meaning. Emily Grosvenor is a certified Feng Shui consultant, editor of Oregon Home Magazine, and a Fulbright scholar whose essays, features, and commentary have been featured in Good Housekeeping, Marie Claire, The Atlantic, Salon, and Publishers Weekly. As a Feng Shui consultant, Emily helps her clients adjust the messages in their homes to help them make shifts in their lives. Drawing on ancient wisdom and modern science, Emily will introduce us to a philosophical and practical approach to making spatial shifts in our homes that will help us cultivate a more meaningful life. She'll also share her 5-step method for shaping our space so it shapes us back. If you like what you heard, please don't forget to like, rate, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Thanks. Hey, Emily, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. It's such a pleasure.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. I am so excited to talk to you about a topic that interests me, and I assume that it interests a lot of our listeners as well. And that is creating a home space that empowers us and nurtures our dreams. And your new book, Find Yourself at Home, is a helpful guide on this topic. And I have to tell you, Emily, that after I read the book, I made some changes in my home and I instantly felt uplifted. So it really does work.
I want to know what you did now. What were the
What did I
changes you
do?
made? Yeah.
Well, I removed certain objects from my room that I felt like didn't have any more meaning for me, and I replaced them with some other pieces that I bought at a furniture store. So yeah, I mean, it just kind of changed the energetic configuration, and I just felt different. I just felt different, I just has a completely different feel to it now.
That's awesome. Those are my favorite stories. It's such a dynamic and wonderful process to be in conversation with your home that way. And the cool thing is once you've made those changes, you feel the effects immediately and then they become subconscious. You just integrate them into your life and move on.
Yeah, so I really, really enjoyed everything that you wrote about in the book. But one of the things that really struck me is the title, which was Find Yourself at Home, a conscious approach to shaping your space and your life. So I was curious about why you chose the word conscious. And what does it mean to be conscious about our home designs? And what does that look like?
So I think that consciousness is important because it allows you to assess your home space, which you've been basically swimming in for weeks or months or years. The more we live in a space, the more we become acclimated to it, the more we stop paying attention to the little things that are happening. That's why being in a dynamic relationship with your space and being open to changing it is so important, because your space is very much a reflection of what's going on within you. So if you're willing to take a look at your space and adjust things within your space, it creates an opening for you also to be more comfortable with the changes that are going on in your life and in that wider world outside. The other thing that's kind of interesting about consciousness is 95% of our thoughts are not conscious. So our spaces are affecting us whether or not we are actually paying attention to them. So just going through a process where you can center yourself and take a good look of what's going on around you gives you an opportunity to really figure out, where am I right now and where do I want to be and how can I make the changes to get there?
Mm. And I think a lot of us find that hard to do because we're so busy with our life that we kind of just tune everything out, like everything in the background, unless it's really, really getting on our nerves. Like, if we have too much clutter and we're like, oh my God, I have to clear this out now. But unless it's something as big as that, we don't really pay attention. We're not as conscious, as you said, about our spaces. So I think it's just about taking that time to really sit down and be like, okay, like, do I really like what my room looks like now? Do I really like what my kitchen looks like? Right?
Right. And are these messages that I've surrounded myself with, are they serving me now? Are they holding me in the past? Am I holding on to old hurts? Have I found a way to create inspiring imagery for myself within my home space? I think that as with anything else in our lives, it's very important to prioritize your relationship with what is effectively like that outer energetic cell of
Mm.
yourself, right? I think a lot of us, I mean, I'm not the first person to say that COVID was a real eye opener for people when it comes to their homes. We saw it with a massive increase in interest around the home space when everyone was sent home. I think a lot of people looked around their houses and thought, well, I don't know what I want now, but I know it's not this.
Did you get
And
a
it
lot
just,
of, did you get more phone calls during COVID?
yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah.
People are just spending more time with themselves, right? And being more inwardly focused as opposed to, how big am I going to make my life, but really understanding how small our lives actually are.
Right. And our homes say a lot about us too, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like to think of the home. People have different philosophies about what a home actually is, but I like to think of it when 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 it feels good to me, I feel like I'm surrounding myself with the stories that I have decided to live with. And any of those stories that you're telling yourself about your life are they're able to be rewritten just the way a room can be redone. You can also rewrite the stories that you tell about yourself.
Mm. And that is so personal. Sometimes you don't even realize that. Like, for instance, I had this friend. I mean, she seemed completely normal. She was relaxed, she was chilled out, she had her life together. She was doing really well in school. But then when I entered her house, it was really, really cluttered. It was
Mhm.
not clean, and it was a mess, right? And it did not reflect on the outer persona that she projected. And I thought that was so interesting that that just did not align.
I think that's interesting too. I mean, I grew up in a home. My mom was a single mother, and she's kind of like that too. Like the way she projects to the rest of the world is very important to her. She's always impeccably dressed, always presenting this beautiful image to the world. And when I was growing up at home, things were really messy and things were super cluttered. And it's changed over time since she's had more time to devote to her home space. But I think understanding that it's almost like those things are rubbing against each other, right? Now, I never want to be in a position where I'm like judging people for how their homes look. There's a certain amount of clutter that can feel like really charming. Like I know cluttercore is a thing now, and maximalism is a thing. So for me, when I go into a space, it's very important that I'm not um, projecting certain judgments onto other people's spaces. It's more important that I understand what their goals are for their lives. And so for some people, the mess is bothersome, and then you help them with that. For other people, that's that's the least of their worries. The important thing is to really understand that people are different, and they need to understand themselves in order to set up their home spaces to be really a powerful collaborator in their life.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And in your experience, Emily, what do you think are some of the most common mistakes that people make when they design their home environments? Like, what are some of the things they do that really do not serve them?
I mean, it's interesting. Have you ever noticed, have you ever like been in a neighborhood or in an environment where someone is basically living in a junkyard, and they're the people who have up the signs that say, you're on video, no trespassing. Have you encountered that?
I have, yes, I have.
And it always amazes me, because what I think is that is not a place that anyone's going to want to trespass. They're not putting wonderful energy out into the world. So wonderful energy is not going to be coming at them, right? So um, there's within the world of Feng Shui, we talk a lot about enhancements. So, energy is swirling around your home and through your home, whether or not you are doing anything. But there are things that you can do to enhance your home in order to attract better energy to that front door. And the front door is actually one of the first places I usually look, right? Like if someone is looking to make a positive change in their life, front door energy is absolutely the first place to start. Now, interestingly, real estate people kind of understand that intuitively. Like they talk about curb appeal, but they think about it more in terms of the commercial appeal, right? Whereas I think about it more in terms of welcoming energy, right? So things like painting your door a really auspicious color, or including some kind of statement planner or like statuary that draws the eye. In Feng Shui, they say qi being energy, flows where the eye goes. So just really paying attention to where your eye goes as you're walking through a space can help you make decisions about where to incorporate different design elements. So
Okay.
it's not really a mistake per se. It just depends on how much you really want to attract that energy. You see lots of people's homes where you can't even find the front door, right? And so for people like that, I read that as someone who wants to create more of like a boundary for themselves, right? Whereas someone who's like, I just need to get like the good juices flowing and get some good juju coming in here. They're going to be focusing on, am I going to incorporate some beautiful flowers at this front door? Should I like create like a meandering path so visitors know like exactly how to get to my front door? These are all relatively easy things that people can incorporate to their life. Um, I don't think most Feng Shui consultants and people who kind of swim in that space, I've never heard anyone talk about a mistake. It's a very kind of soft and helpful practice, and there's not a lot of judgment attached to it. And I think that's one of the most helpful things about it. People are so vulnerable about their home spaces. Some people are really almost scared to welcome other people into their home because they're afraid of that level of judgment. So I think for anyone who's wants to empower themselves in their space, the first step is always just really getting clear about how you want that space to be on your side, and to look at it really lovingly, right? Because in effect, how do you see your space is also how you're seeing yourself. And we all deserve a little bit of kindness, right?
Yeah, we sure do. So
Yeah.
is it safe to say that you should create a space that is right for you, as in you should personalize it? Because I know you talk about energy maps and how to create one for yourself.
Yeah. So what I think so fascinating from the world of environmental psychology, I grew up and I learned a lot from my mother about style and about taste, but she is also a very introverted person. So she had a very, very specific ideas about what was correct in terms of, how you present yourself and the things that you live with and in terms of your own personal taste. But what we're discovering about introverts and extroverts and everyone who kind of fits in that scale from this person to this one person is that people have different levels of energetic openness and different requirements for how much visual stimuli and also oral stimuli and also name whatever sense you want. So someone who's introverted is taking in a lot of information all the time, and they need to set up their space in a way that supports that level of introversion. So for an introverted person, that could mean introverts tend to prefer single seats as opposed to couches, right? Because with a couch, you're kind of clustered. Someone can sit like too close to you, and maybe they're encroaching on your space in a way. Introverts tend to prefer landscapes and maybe abstract paintings and art that is more soothing, whereas an extrovert might prefer art with people in it, or they might prefer to have bolder colors instead of more muted colors. So I think the beautiful thing about knowing yourself is you have a lot more freedom to not ignore if you enjoy following trends, but really pick and choose what you want from what's available on the marketplace, and only pick choices and make design decisions that really support you as you are.
Right, because I think there's that temptation to create a home that impresses others, especially if you're an
Right,
extrovert and you plan to have a lot of parties and you plan to
right,
entertain a lot of people.
right. And that's absolutely great. I wonder sometimes though, I mean, I'm a magazine editor too. I edit Oregon Home Magazine. And when I see everything that's coming on the market, when you look at catalogs a lot, I look at tons of catalogs and I read all the magazines, and you start to see like a certain type of space being in ascendance. Right now, I that space that kind of design style seems like more minimalism is really huge in the design world. And so, but I look at those and I wonder is that design style, is there something about that design style that meets everyone's needs? I can't imagine that it does. Um, but maybe that just comes from the freedom to choose, right? Like people who can redo their home every 2 years or whatever. Maybe that means that people who latch onto trends are quick changers who just appreciate being part of that conversation. I don't know, but that's something I think about all the time.
Mm. So for someone who's not quite sure what design would appeal to them, what do you suggest? What do you suggest that they do? Do you think they should just look through catalogs as you do? What are some of the things that they can do to get creative inspiration?
I Pinterest is always the first place that a designer would send you. Like if you find if you've if you're working with a designer, I think their first step is generally when they interview you to get a sense of what you like. And if you can't really articulate what you like, generally a designer would send you to Pinterest with a couple of ideas. Um, but beyond that, I think some very basic questions maybe are more helpful. I think I even have an exercise in the book where asking you to choose where you land on certain dichotomies between like, do you prefer bold color or do you prefer neutrals? Do you prefer a personal space? Do you like things a little bit more anonymous? I think just answering those questions for yourself is a good place to start. And then also just really getting creative about where you're drawing your inspiration. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be from someone else's space. You could also think about it in terms of, where do I like to travel? What is my personal history? You know, more and more my family
And even
is
movies,
go ahead.
right? Entertainment for me, like I'm really attracted to like the old Hollywood aesthetics, like the
Oh yeah.
1940s with all the mahogany and the velvet on the furniture. So, I mean, you could be inspired by anything, really.
Right. Right. It's just getting very clear with yourself on what you like and feeling really comfortable with your own taste, understanding that if you like it, if you instinctively like it, then it's naturally going to be a good vibe when you recreate it in your space.
That's good advice. So, in your book, you write something really interesting, Emily. You say that home isn't a place to escape the world, but instead should be the great collaborator in your life. Can you please say more about that?
So I think that I was really responding to a lot of the marketing messages that we receive around home. You know, a lot of marketing is fear-based. So, you know, within the past decade, we've heard a lot about people talking about their home as their sanctuary. But that word really changed for me when within the political realm, people started talking about sanctuary cities, and I started thinking about what sanctuary actually means. So now I feel like I have a
Sorry, what are
real
sanctuary cities for those who don't know? What are you
so
talking about?
sanctuary cities are places where illegal immigrants won't be prosecuted for being illegal immigrants. So it became a big thing, I believe, in the 2016 presidential election. So you know, I started noticing just how safe I actually was in my life, and just how good I had it, right? And then I started thinking about how homes, when we attribute one purpose to them, we're really not giving our homes credit for all the hard work they do. I mean, our homes are really hardworking. We are constantly collaborating with their spaces, and when set up well, they make our lives better. I mean, that's basically what every designer does, right? Like they study human and space interaction, and they make tweaks in order to make it better. So I really wanted to think about the home as a place not to hide away or not to like shut out the world, but as a collaborative and supportive environment that can help you really get what you want. Sure, it can be a sanctuary. It can be a safe place. It can be an empowering space. It can also be a place uh, where you're interacting with other people, where you're hosting other people, where for a
And
lot
where
of
you're
us, it's where we're
where
doing
you're
our work.
creating things. Yeah, where you're
Right.
creating things, because you have this whole chapter on creativity, on how to create a home that really brings that out of you, the
Right.
creative urges.
So I've been a work at home writer for about 15 years now. I've been doing it a long time. So when people were all I hesitate to say all because a lot of people were not sent home, but when a lot of professionals were sent home during COVID, I mean, people lost their minds for a little bit because they didn't have the boundaries set up. Their spaces were not set up for at home work. And even now, I mean, it's something I think about constantly, how to create those boundaries between the workday and everything else that is going on in their lives. So I think the first step is always just to realize what's going on, like what the problem is, by assessing how you're feeling about it, and instead of just accepting that nothing's ever going to change. I like to think of looking for spatial solutions, looking around your space and saying, okay, this isn't working. There's a power in saying when something's not working, and I'm making a conscious choice about how to move forward.
Yeah, there sure is. And you briefly mentioned that Feng Shui plays a big part in the work that you do. So can you just tell us briefly what Feng Shui is all about and how it influences your approach to shaping homes?
Sure. So Feng Shui is basically assessing how energy moves through a space. It's an ancient practice that has been adapted and adjusted for any number of environments. People use it in work environments. They use it in home spaces, and there are both practices within Feng Shui that seem like magical and a little bit more mystic, and there are practices that are very easily understood by Western audiences. And so I tend to incorporate a little bit of both. I absolutely believe in good design. I'm kind of swimming in that world in my work at Oregon Home. But I also believe in the more magical parts of Feng Shui, the idea that this is just an example of one of them. And in Feng Shui, it's very important to have representations of all five of the elements. I think you actually did a podcast on
I
five
did.
elements.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So which is fascinating. It's something that I had never really encountered before. For example, I'm a wood person and I'm married to a wood person. We have 100 bonsai
Go
outside of our yard.
Woods. So am
Right.
I. Yeah,
Right. So, but sometimes, I mean, we burn out. We absolutely tend to
we
burn
sure
out.
do.
So
Mm.
having the understanding that some kind of regenerative water in my life is going to be important is really helpful for me. But within a space, just understanding that a space feels balanced when it has those five elements has been really transformational for me, right? Um, Interestingly, when a lot of people do this intuitively, I'm really fascinated by how designers are able to do what they do just through their intuition. And sometimes I really enjoy going through catalogs and going through magazines and looking at images that feel really beautiful and wonderful to me, really helpful, and just assessing whether all five of those elements are in those images. And often they are, right? But they weren't necessarily put in there because the designer was thinking about five elements. It's something that someone who has really kind of tapped into materiality and into those visual cues, the power of those visual cues, is going to incorporate those naturally.
Mm. I actually consulted a Feng Shui expert a few years
Mm.
ago, and she created a chart for me that I don't know what it's called, but she basically told me what my element is. And based on that, she created a map for my home and told me what I should, what I should include and what I should remove in each section of my home based on the
Yep.
customized map
The
that she
bagua.
created for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's what it's called. So, do you do that as well? I mean, is that also a key aspect of your
Uh,
process?
Absolutely. It's really important. The I love it. I've always loved floor plans. Like I've loved floor plans since I was a child. I used to visit open houses with my mother, and I would come back and I would draw my dream floor plan of just like a spatial makeup of your house, because you can tell a lot about what's going on for the people when you have that top down view. So
Mm.
within
And it
Feng
changes.
Shui,
It's dynamic
oh
too.
yeah, or you have to do it regularly, or what I
Yeah.
like to think of it in terms of the seasons. So it's a fun practice to make changes to your home, just based on what's going on outside your window. But for me, the reason the bagua is so powerful is it creates such an interesting metaphor for what's going on inside your life, and it gives you a name that connects an aspect of your life to a particular space in your house. So, for example, I'm sitting in my travel and helpful people area of my home according to the Feng Shui Bagua. There's different sections. There's finance and prosperity. There's fame and reputation. There's a place for your love and partnerships. There's a place for children and creativity. I'm here in travel and helpful people. The front door is generally your life path and your career. There's wisdom and self knowledge, and there's an area for health. And then the center is for your overall well being and spirituality. So if you don't know, if you don't have an instinct of where you want to put certain symbols in your life, the Bagua provides a nice map for you to start playing with that symbology. It effectively gives you a little bit of support in making those choices, and it also allows you to create a really balanced life, right? Like if you're in someone's house and you notice that it's all maybe it's all images of family, well, that means that their family is really important to them. That's the primary purpose of their life. But say that person has kids who have all gone off to school and left the nest, and they're ready to have room for other interests and other hobbies and other purposes. Maybe it's a good time to take down some of that family imagery and to see where to incorporate other symbols, other books, um, sculptures, artwork that's sending them a different message about this next stage of life. If something's going wrong too, you can also say, "Oh gosh, I'm really having a hard time with my finances right now. Maybe it's time to clean out my that area and put some feng shui enhancements over there, right?" So in feng
Add a
shui,
laughing Buddha or those golden coins or a dragon. I know there are a lot of there are
right. I
certain
mean, you
objects, right, that they associate with
right.
financial
You can do
prosperity.
that. You
Yeah.
could absolutely like go full on and acquire those things. But
Yeah.
for me, I mean, I'm a Western European woman and my family's all from Germany. So, like, putting a Buddha wouldn't make as much sense for me personally. But that's what's so welcoming about Feng Shui is there's lots of different ways to bring that element in that are based on your own personal symbology, right? Like for us, we're definitely wood people, and sure enough, every time we go shopping for art, and if we encounter something at the local Goodwill or at a vintage store, we love those artworks just of treescapes, right? So
Yeah.
putting that in your corner is going to be just as effective as using those things that may not feel authentic for everyone.
Oh, I love that you say that because it's like whenever you read books on feng shui, they give you very specific objects like the ones I mentioned. So I love that you say that you can personalize it and that the objects you choose should have meaning to you. It should elicit those feelings of
Right.
abundance when you look at them.
Right. Right. You don't
Yeah.
want to look at something and say, "Oh, that's the thing I put there because
Yeah, that's what I'm
someone
supposed
on
to
the
do.
internet someone on the internet told me that
Yeah.
was like a magical cure." Like
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
just figuring out what your personal symbology is such a powerful practice.
Yeah. Like for instance, I come from the Indian culture and a lot of
Mhm.
Hindu homes, they like to put like a statue of Lakshmi because she's the
Mhm.
goddess of wealth. So they like to put those statues of her because it's believed according to Hindu mythology that she helps you attract more money and just abundance in general. So, I mean, that's one example of how it could be attached to your culture.
Absolutely. Do you have one?
And I personally don't, but my parents do.
Well, and also if you think about like how to update it, like if you're someone who is like, well, I like the idea of having this kind of statuary in my house. We live in this amazing world where people are creating so many different options. Say you have like a minimalist space, but you don't want something that feels so filigreed and so ornate. You can go on Etsy and find someone who is making like a minimalist version of that, like there's just a lot of
That's such a good idea. That is
so
such a
much
good
freedom,
idea.
right? And then it feels more personal and it feels more like you.
So, Emily, you talk about 5 steps that we could use to create a home environment that supports our values and self-discovery. Can you quickly take us through each one of them?
Sure. Let me think if I can remember all 5 of the steps. So my book is
Yeah.
separated into five sections, and those
Yeah.
are effectively the 5 steps. So in the first part of the book, that's really my philosophy, and not just my philosophy, but also what environmental scientists and lots of people who have come before me have said about the home space, and kind of that's the purpose is to position readers with what we know now and how we might rethink that relationship to home. And then in the second part, you're meeting your environment again for the second time. You're looking at your environment with fresh eyes, and you're going through the process to set yourself up to change that messaging that you're giving yourself. The third section I like to think is all about um, specific design elements that you might want to think about and that you might want to plan for when you're changing the story that you're telling yourself at home. The fourth section, I like to think of it as the Feng Shui section, but it's also about creating. I like to think about it in terms of the aspirations. So we live very unbalanced lives where we've there used to be the idea of work-life balance, and that people were understanding their lives in terms of their work lives and the rest of their lives. But I think feng shui gives a more accurate picture of just how many categories we're actually thinking about. So it kind of takes you out of that work life paradigm and gets you to think a little bit more holistically about how those different parts of your life interact. And then the last part of the book is really about taking what you have learned and really figuring out how to dream, like where you want to take this. Like, don't leave it in the house, right? Don't just make your house and your home life more beautiful and beautiful and beautiful, but also how do you leave your home and take those desires into the rest of the world.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for summarizing that. You did that all in 2 minutes.
Oh, thank you.
So, I mean, people are listening to this and might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed. What is one thing that they can start doing, like right after listening to this interview? Well, one is getting your book, but what's the second one?
I mean, I think what I would do first is probably get rid of the things that you have negative associations with. That's a good step. There's no reason why you need to continue to live with something that makes you feel bad. It doesn't matter if someone gave you that thing. It doesn't matter
Mhm.
if
The gifts
you
from the
inherited it.
ex, the dresses you
Right,
wore when you were out with your ex.
right. Or there's just no reason why you need to keep this stuff around you. It's so freeing. I mean, I think a lot of people experience that when they experience that through decluttering, but it's not just about the stuff that feels like it's extra. It's about really assessing all of the objects in your space, right? And freeing up room on your walls, on your shelves, in the corner of your room for something that's better and more supportive for you.
Love that. Emily, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. I really, really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for being here with us and sharing your knowledge.
Thank you so much.
So Emily Grosvenor's book, Find Yourself at Home, A Conscious Approach to Shaping Your Space and Your Life, is available in all major bookstores. And you can also find it on Emily's website, emilygrosvenor.com. As usual, the links will be in the description. All right, Emily, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much.